Something has been striking me recently. It's how easy it is for life to become something we're getting ready for. Not necessarily in obvious ways. Most people don't wake up and think, I'm postponing my life. No, it feels much more reasonable than that. It sounds like this. Once I'm more confident, once I understand myself better, once I've dealt with this, once I stop feeling that way, then I'll really begin living. At first, this doesn't seem like a problem. In fact, it can sound responsible. It can sound like someone who wants to grow before moving forward. But I wonder if something more subtle can happen. The future can slowly become the place where life is expected to feel different, more settled, more natural, more complete, and without really noticing it, the present can become preparation for that future. I found this interesting because preparation isn't necessarily unpleasant. It can feel productive. You're learning, reading, reflecting, working on yourself, trying to understand experiences that keep happening. All of those things can have value, but there's a question I've been sitting on. At what point does preparation quietly become a way of postponing participation? Not because you're consciously avoiding life, but because you're waiting to become someone who finally feels ready to live it. And that's something many people can relate to. You hesitate to take a step because you don't feel quite prepared. You hold back on doing something important because you think you need a little more certainty. You imagine that a future version of yourself will naturally do what the present version of yourself struggles to do. And the interesting thing is, that future version always seems to just stay ahead of you. You make progress. You understand yourself more. You become more experienced. But that readiness itself seems to never quite arrive the way you expected. The standard quietly changes. Now you need a little more confidence, a little more clarity, a little more understanding. The destination moves. And so preparation continues. What interests me isn't whether preparation is good or bad. It's the relationship we can begin to have with it. Because if you're always preparing, when exactly does living begin? That's a surprisingly difficult question. Not because life isn't happening. Life is happening all the time. Conversations are happening. Relationships are happening. Ordinary Tuesday afternoons are happening. But psychologically, your attention can remain somewhere else. On the person you're trying to become. On the version of yourself that you think will finally feel ready. And I wonder if that's one of the costs of organizing life around self-correction. The present quietly loses status. It becomes a place where you prepare, not a place where you live. Again, I want to be very careful here. I'm not suggesting that planning is wrong, that learning is unnecessary, or that growth has no place. That's not the observation. The observation is much narrower. It's possible for preparation to stop being something you do and become the way you relate to your life. Almost as though your real life is waiting somewhere ahead, waiting for the version of you that finally feels complete. But if that version never quite arrives, that preparation has no end. There's always another book, another insight, another habit, another thing to understand, another reason to just wait a little longer. And perhaps that's why this can be so difficult to notice. From the outside, it looks like responsibility. It looks like commitment. It even looks like growth. But underneath it all, there can be a quiet assumption that life will really begin when you become someone different. I've been wondering whether that's an assumption worth questioning. Not because the future doesn't matter, but because life only ever has to be lived here in the present version of yourself, not the imagined one. So perhaps the question isn't, how do I become ready for life? Perhaps it's, what if my life has quietly become preparation for a version of myself that never actually arrives? That's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it's something we'll definitely explore further together.